Talk about sodium. Now, I've told you that sodium is thrown into a lot of foods by the food processors, the food manufacturers. And sodium is something that attracts water. As a matter of fact, water follows salt. If you don't believe that, just, take the bottom, the very last bits of whatever is in a potato chip bag or in a peanut bag, and that's mostly salt, and you down that, and within a few minutes you'll be finding some water. Excessive salt consumption leads to hypertension. Families that have salt shakers on the table and that use salt shakers habitually are families that generally have hypertension. That's a real difficult problem. But even more difficult is a problem that has to do with energy balance. It has to do with our obesity epidemic. Now, if you look at the first page of chapter 9, page 325, you can see that we have an obesity epidemic in this country that has started in your lifetime. 1998, there was no state in the United States that had a 20% obesity rate. In 2008, now there is no state in the United States that has as little as a 20% obesity rate. Most of them are greater than 30%. And with this increased obesity rate in the last 10 years, what we see is childhood obesity, teen obesity. We are having a real problem. It is an epidemic, and it's a recent epidemic. And it probably follows the increase in the amount of internet use, the amount of video game use, and other things which are taking away from traditional activities. There's an unusual study that I'm aware of that has to do with video games. And when they take children who are familiar with Donkey Kong or some video game that they're familiar with, and they look at their basal metabolic rate, that's BMR, is what happens when you're doing nothing. If you're laying in a hospital bed quietly and you're breathing with an oxygen mask on, and they look at how much oxygen you consume and how much carbon dioxide you put out. Turns out that's about 50 to 65% of your total metabolic needs, just maintaining your body's cells, keeping you alive. Basal metabolic rate. Well, if they do this with children who are familiar with a particular video game, you might expect with the excitement of the game would increase their basal metabolic rate, but it doesn't. While they're playing this familiar game, their actual basal metabolic rate goes down. Now, talk about other energy expenditures. We have our basal metabolic rate, which is 50 to 65%. And there's actually a thing called thermic effect of food. That is, how many calories does it take for you to just pick the food up and eat it, chewing it, digesting it? And that's 10 or 15% of your total energy expenditures. So about 25% is all we have left that exercise can actually work into. So we have to be careful to get this exercise if we're going to actually have it be a useful thing. Central obesity, what happens around the waistline, that really turns out to be an important risk factor. It does increase our risk of heart disease. It does increase our risk of obesity. And when we have central obesity, it's because we've been taking in too many calories of fat, too many calories of carbohydrate, too many calories of protein, more than we need. And because this is fat, well, why is it fat? You can actually get fat on carbohydrate. You can actually get fat on taking in protein. All of these are energy sources. And when we have excess energy taken in, our body generally stores it as fat. Okay. what's a good answer? Probably the best one that I know of was put out by the American Heart Association, and that is the 10,000 Steps a Day program. You can buy inexpensive pocket pedometers, and you can clip it on your waist, or you can actually stick it in your pocket, and it will actually keep a good record of how many steps. Most Americans may get 3,000 or 4,000 steps, and what we need is about 10,000 steps a day to keep that activity up. And the inexpensive pedometers you're getting today will actually reset themselves at midnight, and they'll keep a record for months on you. So you can actually see it. It helps you be honest, and you can actually see how much are you getting. I want you to also notice the mice with and without leptin that are pictured in this chapter. They're both in petri dishes, and one of the mice is just a fat blob of a brown mouse, and it's a mouse that does not have the hormone leptin. And then there's a skinny mouse that does not have leptin, but they give him leptin injections. And it turns out if you give leptin injections to the really fat mouse, it will actually decrease its body mass by about 1% a day with leptin. Unfortunately, humans are a little more complex than that. What we need to do is to look at our body mass, our body mass index, which is kind of a product of our height and our weight. You can get it off of tables. And we really should have a body mass index of somewhere between 25 and 30. It's not as dangerous to have one of 30 or 35. In many ways, that gives you some ability to handle disease situations. We also have people that are on the low end that have body mass index that are less than 15. Those people have special danger from anorexia. We're going to deal with that a little more in the next chapter. How about body fat? We can actually measure body fat pretty good by electrical conductivity. And at Tribeca, we have a good number of males that seem to come in with body fat of less than 10%, which is phenomenal. Men will have about 10 to 20% body fat if they're healthy. And even healthy women will end up having more like 18 to 28% body fat. Something that we can work on. We've tried looking at it and tried to see if we can do something to reduce this amount of body fat. At your stage of life, what is happening is you are actually gaining in pounds and gaining in body fat as you go through college. Even if you maintain the starters for our basketball and volleyball teams, those students end up gaining, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. It's part of your stage of life. But recognize that that is something that's happening to you, and what really counts is your fitness level. How well do you feel about what you're doing? How able are you to move around? And what kind of habits are you producing for yourself? Thanks for listening. See you next week.